With the Russian president. He also tackled another tricky issue. India's oil purchases from Russia countered the Western criticism of these purchases.
दुनिया के अनेक देशों के नागरिकों को पेट्रोल डीजल के कारण बहुत बड़े संकट से गुजरना पड़ा और आज भी गुजरना पड़ रहा है, लेकिन हमारे उस कारोबार के कारण हम भारत के नागरिकों को पेट्रोल डीजल के इस मार से बचा पाए, इन्फ्लेशन से बचा पाए और स्टेबिलिटी भी ला पाए। इसके लिए भी मैं आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
In diplomacy, the choice of words is everything. Prime Minister Modi's statements demonstrate how skillfully India balances its ties between Russia and the West. It's a tough balance to maintain, but India must do it to protect its national interest, and so far, New Delhi has done it well. While the NATO summit takes place in Washington, another meeting is taking place in Europe, in one of the few non-NATO countries there. That's Austria. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Vienna today. He dropped by after his Russia visit, and he was given a grand welcome. You saw the Austrian artists singing their rendition of Vande Mataram. For our non-Indian viewers, Vande Mataram is a verse associated with India's independence struggle. Today, it's a patriotic song, making the Austrian rendition a heartfelt gesture. The Indian Prime Minister lauded this performance. He put this post on social media, praising Austria's vibrant musical culture. Of course, Modi wasn't in Vienna just for the music. There was much more on the agenda. After all, this is a rare trip. India and Austria are celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations, and that is a long time. But state visits between the two countries are rare. It has been since an Indian Prime Minister visited Austria. The last visit was in 1983 by Indira Gandhi. That's how long it's been. So there was a lot to catch up on and a lot of new opportunities to explore. Yesterday was for catching up. Prime Minister Modi landed in the afternoon. He was greeted by the Austrian Foreign Minister, who is also Austria's former Chancellor, their equivalent of a Prime Minister. Modi spent yesterday meeting and greeting various people like the Indian diaspora in Vienna and the current Austrian Chancellor, Karl Nehammer. The two leaders, the two heads of state, had dinner and then took some selfies as well. It was around this time that Modi saw the Austrian artists perform Vande Mataram. So that was what took place yesterday, the catching up part. Today was about getting down to business. Prime Minister Modi arrived at Austria's Federal Chancellery. It's effectively their Prime Minister's office. He was given a ceremonial guard of honor when he arrived. Take a look at this. After that, the Indian Prime Minister signed the guest book at the Chancellery, and then he got down to business. Prime Minister Modi and Austrian Chancellor Nehammer held bilateral talks. It was a delegation-level bilateral, and a host of issues were taken up, like trade and investment.
Today, there are excellent economic and trade relations with India, marked by mutual trust and confidence. 2.7 billion euros is the current trade volume. More than 150 Austrian businesses are operating in India, and we expect the number to increase. There will also be Indian investments in Austria.
दोनों देशों की युवा शक्ति और आइडियाज को कनेक्ट करने के लिए स्टार्टअप ब्रिज को गति दी जाएगी। मोबिलिटी और माइग्रेशन पार्टनरशिप पर पहले से समझौता हुआ है। यह लीगल माइग्रेशन और स्किल्ड वर्कफोर्स की मूवमेंट में सहयोग देगा। सांस्कृतिक और शैक्षणिक संस्थाओं के बीच आदान प्रदान को बढ़ावा दिया जाएगा।
It's a lot to unpack, but let's look at the key points. More Austrian businesses are expected to open shop in India. Cooperation between Indian and Austrian startups is expected. An agreement on legal migration has already been reached, and this could help the movement of skilled workers. Those were some of the key points discussed at the bilateral. After this, Prime Minister Modi took part in a business summit. 40 businesses took part. They were from both India and Austria. Hopefully, this translates into more cooperation and partnerships. So that was the major focus of this summit, increasing economic cooperation. And India seems to be on the right track here. Let's see how this plays out in the months to come. We begin tonight with the India-China border conflict. There's a new provocation from the Chinese side over Arunachal Pradesh, the northeastern Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh that China claims as its own and calls South Tibet. Now it is broadening its bogus claims and extending them to water bodies. That's what the latest row is about. China is vying for the control of key water bodies. It began with some new news reports about India's developmental projects. India plans to build 12 power stations in Arunachal Pradesh. These will be hydropower projects. They'll use water from rivers to generate electricity. New Delhi has cleared the plan. With a budget of about $1 billion, the money has been set aside, and the plan is likely to be announced later this month in the budget speech, scheduled for the 23rd of this month, 23rd of July, the first union budget of the Modi government's third term. It will be presented by India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. That's where the hydropower projects in Arunachal Pradesh are expected to be announced. It's a good plan with clear benefits. The domestic demand for electricity is rising in India, and the current sources of power are insufficient. So hydropower could help bridge the gap. Plus, there's scope to expand in this direction. In the last financial year, hydropower accounted for less than 10% in India's overall power output. So there is room to do more. The new plants will contribute to the development of Arunachal Pradesh. The cost will be covered by New Delhi, and the state will get electricity. So it's a win-win. But China has a problem. It is objecting to India's plans. Beijing issued a statement today. It said, India has no right to build these hydropower plants. The statement said, and I quote, South Tibet is China's territory. Like I said, Beijing claims Arunachal Pradesh as part of China and calls it South Tibet. Now, no one agrees with this. There is no international recognition or support for China's claim. There is no legal or historical basis. But China keeps bringing it up to provoke India. So what should India do? Go ahead with the plan. India has every right to set up this project. It's inside Indian territory, funded with Indian money, and for the benefit of Indians. So China has no say in the matter. The problem is Beijing is going beyond statements. It is trying to establish an alternative reality and leverage geography to put pressure on India. Now, one part of the sinister plan involves rivers in the region, specifically the Brahmaputra River. Among the largest in the world, the Yarlung Sangbo, region controlled by China, India and Bangladesh. The state of Arunachal Pradesh through the northern part of the state, and the Brahmaputra is an important river for the region. 130 million people depend on it, their lives and livelihoods. And China wants to control and leverage the Brahmaputra by building a dam. The project was announced a few years ago, a super hydropower dam. It will be built in Tibet on a section of the Brahmaputra. Reports say that this dam would have more capacity than the Three Gorges Dam. The Three Gorges Dam is the biggest dam in China. It is the world's largest hydropower facility, built on the Yangtze River. So the dam in Tibet is expected to be bigger than that. Now, India had lodged a protest against this project, but China has not changed its mind. Today, it has expressed outrage over India's planned projects. They could act as spoilers for China's project in Tibet, which makes it all the more crucial, not just for India's energy security, but also for its sovereignty. In recent months, China has challenged India on multiple occasions. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Modi had visited Arunachal Pradesh, and Beijing had protested the visit.
The China-India border issue remains unresolved, and India has no right to unilaterally develop the Chinese southern Tibet region. India's related actions will only complicate the border issue and negatively impact the situation in the border areas of the two countries.
Then Beijing released a new list of Chinese names for territories in Arunachal Pradesh. Since 2017, China has released 4 such lists and given Chinese names to almost 100 Indian territories, all in Arunachal Pradesh. And now it is going after power projects and Indian rivers. It is time for New Delhi to draw a line. It should push back harder against China's bogus claims. Now let's turn our attention to Africa, to Kenya in the east, where President William Ruto has just taken another step. He addressed the country and made this announcement.
Recent events that necessitated the withdrawal of the finance bill, which will require a review and reorganization of our budget and fiscal management, have brought us to an inflection point. I have today, in line with the powers given to me by Article 1521 and 1525B of the Constitution and Sections 12 of the Office of the Attorney General's Act, decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the Cabinet Secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya, except the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Secretary